Hey guys, Chris Dick here. So today I'm going to be carrying on with my SharePoint series for project management, and in this one we're going to talk about reporting information in Excel. We'll also be doing another series for another part of this series, anyhow, for the doing the dashboard page in SharePoint. So stay tuned for that one. So in this Excel spreadsheet that we have a dashboard that has some information, some charts that is specifically geared towards running our projects. The things that we feel are the most important information, and in particular, we have the budget versus actual chart, which demonstrates per deliverable, how we're doing as far as how much we spent in the blue and how much we have available to spend in the whole project. The other one is cost per person. And in this case, what I would be looking for is how much is each phase of the STLC costing. You could limit that down as well. You could take away the project phase and just find out what the cost per person is. And we will also look at some other ideas there too. Typically, you might use this chart by selecting the person. Okay, and in which case you can filter it out. You generally wouldn't necessarily compare a bunch of people because this chart would get kind of confused. But if you needed to, you could expand the chart and maybe make a bigger one. The next one here is hours by deliverable and by week. So one of the things that we look at here is in this case, we're looking at a deliverable and we're saying what's the weekly cost for this deliverable to take place and to be managed. So in here, um, we can see that we're gradually having an increase in the amount of spending that we're doing by hours. This one doesn't have anything to do with cost, but the hours that are spent are equally as important here. Next one is we have the weekly budgeted versus actual. So what we have is an average weekly spending budget that we engage here that we use as a number that we can supply to our data source that then says are we okay for our weekly spending, and in here you can see that we're not, and when we get to this chart we'll explain to you how that works. The task budget versus actual, this is also a very important one because one of the things that we have to look at is are we on track with the investments that we're putting into a task. There are a few tasks in this that are already over budget, and those are the things that we want to be tracking and making sure that we have the right data available to us, and that our people are not spending too much time on tasks doing this job. The last one is the resource usage by week and task chart. So this one here now shows me an example here. If I am trying to find out what tasks someone worked on during a week, I can simply look up the person, okay, and I can look up the start of the week. I can, for example, just choose what week they worked at, and I can see that Chris Dick, me, worked on API development task 1 and API development task 2. Okay, and I think that's about it. So let's get started here, and we're going to go back over to our timesheets list. Okay. Most important, when we look at this list, it's a lot of information, and most of it looks like it's a big jumble, right? If you see from our previous videos, we created some other views which give it a little bit more compartmentalization. This one is based on tasks that are assigned to a person. Okay, I can see that I have worked 65 hours on the API deliverable. If I go by week, These are also important charts. Maybe you're setting up payroll and you're looking for how much you would be paying people. So in this case, we have 6 hours on the week of the 30th of August, and then on the 6th, I have 16 hours for that week. Okay, and then I've got a fairly good record going forward. And then, of course, our Gantt chart also has an interesting view of it as well, but we won't be looking at that one today. That one's not as important. Okay, so let's take a look at this here. Right now, we've got this list of information. Okay, this one isn't very usable in a context of visualization. All it is just data. So what we want to do now is we're going to start off by we're going to try to rework any of all these charts here to understand how they function. Most of them will function off the straight data set, but some of them, however, will function off grouped information, which will be kind of an interesting one. This one in particular is like that. So let's get started here. So we'll go to File and New. I'm going to create a blank worksheet. So we are going to have a dashboard. That's one that we're going to have at the very end. And we are going to have a timesheet data. Okay, the timesheet data sheet is where our data that we pull in from the timesheet list from SharePoint will actually sit. So to do that, we click on the Data tab. All right, we go to Get Data from Online Services and then from SharePoint Online List. All right. Now from here, all we have to do is select this portion of the URL for our SharePoint. Anything in this case, anything just like the first action or endpoint past the word sites is typically where you'll find that in a SharePoint. So this would be fine. Even this would be okay because SharePoint will extract the lists. But this is the one that we actually want here. Okay. So we click that and we paste that in there. We just copy the URL, paste it in, click on OK. And then what this is doing is now connecting to the SharePoint, and it's going to go out and find all the lists in this SharePoint. So from here, I'm going to go out and find my timesheets. Okay. Now, what you're seeing is it's going to bring in a whole lot of data that is not important to us. Okay, and this is really really important at this phase because it comes down to how much information do we want to be dragging down from SharePoint every time we request it. If there's a lot of information coming down, it's going to be slow. So let's edit what we are taking down here. Okay, so what we start off with is this. Now, there are a few things that that we're gonna look at here. We're looking at applied steps. We'll spend a bit of time doing these things. So let's find out what navigation actually did here. From what I think, it's only just pulling in that sheet, and that's all that did. So I wanted to understand what it did, but that's fine. Rename columns. This is something that's done internally, so you can safely ignore it, and we just move forward. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take away some of the things that we don't need. So follow my lead here, and if you're uncomfortable with it, you don't have to worry about it. It's just a lot more to manage when you're using this. So we can remove the file system object type. Let's keep the ID because that's the ID of the task that we are bringing in, or not the task, but the timesheet entry. The embed URI we can get rid of. We don't need these. Let's see. Content type ID, we don't need that. Title we'll keep because we had that as an entry, but we won't use it in this. Compliance asset ID we don't need. Deliverable ID, project phase ID, ID task, assigned to ID we'll keep, but ID string or assigned to string ID we don't need. That's just a conversion of the assigned to. Now, hours we're going to keep as a number, But let's take a closer look at task date. Now, this is an important one because the task date comes in as a number, but it interprets it as a date. Okay, this is really key to recognize. What it's doing is what we have to do anyhow is we have to actually convert that to a date so that it comes in properly when we load it into the spreadsheet. All right, so now it comes in as a date. Now task date, we are in our dashboard reporting, we're not interested about what time things happen, but more what day things happen, something less granular. Okay. We never use comments, so we can safely remove that. Now, here's another one here. Take a look at these, the start of week and end of week. All right, these are two fields that are in the timesheets list, and they're useful for certain reporting features in here and on SharePoint. But notice they're a different format. The task date was a number that was coming in, and they were converting it to, a date. The start of week is a different kind of date. This one has time zone information. It doesn't actually contain time zone, but it does have this time zone information. So it has date and time. All right. So we have to do two conversions here. First, what we have to do is we have to convert it from a number to a date time zone. Okay, it won't allow us to in fact change it to a date time because this is a specific type of data type that it comes in as. So now the next thing that we do is we convert it to date, because again, we're not interested in the time of this. We're just looking at the date. So here it says change column type. There's an existing conversion, but we have to do this in two steps. So we have to do add new step. Okay. Now it's also a really good idea to name what's happening here. Okay. So let's look at this first one. This was for changing this task date to date. Okay. So we're gonna call this change task date to date. Change task date data type to date. Okay. Then we remove this, and we won't worry too much about what's going on. You could name this if you want, and it's a good idea to understand what stages of import go through here. We go through. Let's copy this text here because we'll reuse it. The next one, we're going to be changing the start of week. Okay, so we do start of week data type to date time zone. Okay, copy that because we'll reuse that again. Okay, and then we apply that, and now we move on to the next step, which is just going to be date. Okay, so we've applied two steps. So if I walk back here, you see I can go back and reclaim what was done, reverse what was done. If I wanted to delete something here and say, whoops, I made a mistake, I can just flip back and make the change. So we're going to repeat that same process for end of task. So we change it to time zone with date time zone, and then we change it to date. Add a new step. Okay, and this one didn't appear to have the two-step process for some reason, and I'm not sure why, but then date. Let's see. And, oops, that's not start of week. That's end of. Oh, I just deleted my thing there. So let's see. We are going to do, okay, add step. All right, missed something there. Let's going a little bit too fast. Right click on that, change that to start of week, and this one is called end of task. Okay. Now end of task is when the task actually ended. So let's say that a task started this morning and ended tomorrow morning. There would be a difference in date. So when does the task actually end? Now we're not using any of those types of parts of data here, so it doesn't really make much of a difference. Now, next thing, we also have this ID1. Now, for our purposes, we don't need it, so I'm going to delete that column, just remove it. Okay. We don't necessarily need the modified date, but if you were trying to do an audit trail on something, you'd be wanting to be you'd want to be aware of that. What else we need is the author ID and the editor ID. We don't need these two fields per se, but we can keep them. And again, this is sort of an audit trail, and I'm going to allude to this later on how this would be useful for you. Okay, so the OData version string, we don't need that. We don't use any attachments in this set of dashboards. We don't need that. The GUID, we don't need that. First unique, we don't need this. Role assignments, attached files, content type, policy, fields as HTML, fields as text we don't need. Lots of stuff here we don't need, right? So we can get rid of all these file, folder, liked by information, that's in other words if there's a rating scale attached to this, and then parent list. We're not going to use that this time, so we'll just take that away. Properties, versions, and deliverables. So we're going to keep all this information now. Okay, so some of the things that we need here, we need some parts of the deliverable. All right, and we don't need a whole record. So in fact, if I pull in record, it actually won't pull this data in. So what we want to do is work on what data we do want out of the deliverable. Now, if you think about how deliverable works, deliverable is a top level task. It will definitely have a title. It might have a start and end date, which can be valuable. We won't be using that here. It will not have a budgeted hours because it's a summary task. This is only going to be used for budgeted hours is only used for tasks that actually have hours attached to them. Okay, so let's go ahead and select the pieces that we want here. So we're going to select just the title, and let's think about what else we might want here. From what I know, I don't think that we need anything else. So if we do, we'll come back to it later and make that correction. Okay, so here you see that it says expand deliverable, right? So if I click this gear icon, if we want to come back to that later, I can always say, okay, I want something else, some other part of this. Okay, so we're not lost if we've made that change, so don't worry too much about it. Project phase, kind of the same as deliverable. All we need is the title, so we just unselect everything and click on title. Okay. The task, now this one's more important. We need the title, we need the budgeted hours, the task date, where is this, is it start date? Is that what I call it? Let's just double check here, make sure we're not losing something here. We'll take in start of week, and let's click on start date just to be sure. All right, I think we have that, and again, we can come back to that later if we need more. All right, the task date. Now look at this one here again. If we select on task date, we've also got the same problem. We've got date and time, and I only need just the date portion of that. Okay. I just realized it's probably not that necessary because really the one that we're going to be pivoting off is our task date anyway. So that the task start doesn't make any difference. So in fact, I'm going to get rid of that one. Let's take that one away. We don't need that. Okay, make sure we got budgeted task. We don't need start of the week, just title and budgeted task is all we need. Okay, so we have the task title and the budgeted hours. Notice the budgeted hours all have values next to them. Okay, the assigned to is also very important because this will help us know who a task is assigned to. Okay, now you might think it would be more obvious to choose name, but in fact this is not what it is. It's actually title that will give us the person's name here. If you want to pull in their email address or some other information, you can explore this a little bit more if you like. But what we will have here is let's just push insert, and I think that's because we just inserted this. We don't need the change type actually. So we'll just go back to that. Make sure we're walking through this okay. Skipping around a bit, sorry guys. So that just added in this column right here. Okay. And finally, these author and editor are also details that are a person. So this is a user in the system. So once again, we just need to pull in their title. And we're not going to use this per se, but you know, if we decide at some point that we should use it, then we will have it available to us. So unselect, click on title. Okay. So now our database is available to us. One thing that I'm going to do, and yeah, I think that I'm going to do I'm going to add a column right now that is the weekly cost or the weekly budget. Okay, it'll just be a column that'll be attached to every item here, and the weekly column can be calculated fairly easy. Okay, now what it is, it's the number of people in your team. Okay, this is for a class, but if you're watching this in general, we have a budgeted set of hours for our teams in class. Each student has 5 hours. All right, multiply that by the number of students and you'll have the weekly budget. All right, so if you have 4 people in your group, that would mean that you have 20 hours to accomplish your task. So we're going to say 20 is our budgeted hours. Okay, so I'm going to call that our weekly budgeted hours. So that means we're not using any of these available columns to do any calculations. We'll do something like that later on. Okay, and I think what I'm going to do now as well is I'm going to add one more column that will be for the cost of the task. All right, and that will mean that we'll have a calculation. Okay, we'll call it cost. Okay, that means that we have in our class we have an hourly rate of $50 an hour. All right, so we multiply hours times 50. Quite easy. And what that's going to do is going to create another column that will calculate how much this task actually cost. Okay, so let's load this data into our timesheet here. Click on close, and close and load, that is. Okay, it takes a little bit of time here. It's going out and querying the data. Okay, so we have our data, and now we can start creating tables from it. So let's go over to our dashboard over here, and we're gonna start off with some of the easier tables. This one here, the overall, is a grouped table, so I'm going to come back to that in a minute. All right, so let's look at the hours by deliverable by week. Okay. This one here comes, all of these tables come from pivot tables that we use, and we'll just go find that table. Let's see, hours by deliverable by week. We'll find out what this is doing here. So from this, we select show field list on this if it's not displaying. What we're doing is we are taking that whole list and we're only showing the hours and the start of the week. Now, start of the week is going to be grouped, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment. So let's look at the list here. So in order to get our first chart, we're going to select the insert button, and you can just select anywhere in your table here. So I've just randomly selected that. Click on the pivot chart, and that will come up and make a best choice for the type of data. The data range is going to be timesheets. That's the area that we've selected. We're going to create a new worksheet for this and then click on OK. All right, now if you recall from over here is asking for hours and start of week, and the deliverable title is the other thing that I was looking for. So let's pull that in. So hours, I know that it's a sum of hours. Okay, start of week, and we have the deliverable title is right there. Now, look what it automatically did. It automatically put in months. Well, we don't need months. That's not so helpful for us. What we are actually wanting is by week. So when I remove months, it does something that's sort of a rudimentary week. It's not bad. We could actually go with this. But I want it to be more grouped. So I'm going to right click on this data area, okay, for start of the week, and I'm going to click group. Okay. I'm going to remove months, and I'm going to make this 7. And this means that it's going by every 7 days, it's going to create a new group. Now, as I mentioned, it is already doing that here. You could probably do fine just keeping it there, but I kind of like the way it uses it this way here. So again, it doesn't look as pretty, but it does. It is a little bit more self-explanatory to say this starts on the 30th and ends on the 5th. All right. So we have our deliverable of API, okay, and our deliverable of deliverable 2. We know that the hours that are spent right now are 5 hours. Okay, and on API, the total hours spent is 65. So if I go back over to the grouped by week, I should be able to see where our hours are coming from. And let's see, so I've got a total of 70 hours. Okay, that's my grand total right there. I haven't got this broken down into deliverable. If I wanted to add another grouping level, I could certainly do that. But total hours, I know that I've got 70 hours, which is accurate. So my tables here are doing what they're supposed to. Okay. Now, the next thing that we have to do is give this a proper name. Okay. So I'm going to go over here and just steal the name from here rather than retype it. This is called hours by deliverable by week. All right, now this is a very important step because we have to, in order for SharePoint to be able to use your chart later on, we need to name it, okay? Right now it's called chart number 1, which isn't very explanatory. So we're going to paste that name in, push enter. Now our chart is named hours by deliverable by week. We're also going to change the sheet name so that it's named appropriately as well, okay? All right, so, and it looks like my timesheet data didn't go into the same sheet, but I'm going to delete that one, and I'm just going to rename my sheet so that it looks proper. So I'm going to move that back over. All right, so now we'll make one more change here. We'll just put in, whoops, I didn't mean to put it as timesheet data. Let's change that. There we go. And there we have it. Now, some of the other things that I've often made is I've made some changes to how things look. I like to put the legend at the bottom. That can help. Now, as well, some of the things that you may want to be aware of is the using this chart. So if I look at the start of the week section, maybe I'm really only wanting to know what happened in this middle area of the chart. Okay, so again, I can narrow it down, and my deliverable, I may only be wanting to know what's happening with API. Okay, so we can limit the information that's going to be displaying on this chart, and that allows us a lot of freedom for presentation. Now, there's something else that you'll want to think about, and I'll just allude to it now. That is the size of the chart is also kind of important here, because in the size of the chart, the SharePoint will, when you import into SharePoint, the chart needs to be sized within Excel. And I found that that is sizing, and I'll go over this again when we dig into the dashboard side, but I thought I'd allude to it now just so that you're ahead of the game. If I click here on this chart, okay, and let's find out, whoops, where do we go? Format chart area, and click on size properties. You're going to see that it's roughly 3 by 5.75. So 3 height and 5.75 width. That's going to be a fairly common thing that you're going to see throughout. So if you size this right now, you'll find that it's much easier to manage later on. And you can see that it's kind of already set up with a sizing that was kind of predefined there. Okay, so we'll close that. And we'll keep that stuff open right now. So we can use this, and we're going to keep this on this sheet for now. All right. Now, one thing that we should do at this point is save our timesheet. Now, I can save mine to my SharePoint, and you should too. I think it would be a very smart idea to start doing that. So I'm going to share or save mine right now, and I'm going to call this timesheet data, and this one is just, I'm going to call this for video. Okay. So it's a good idea to save it to your SharePoint. You can save it locally if you like, but it's better to have that information available on your SharePoint so that it's more integrated. All right, so let's get moving on to the next chart. So we have our project cost by person, by deliverable, and this one here, project cost data, is where I pull this information in. And from this one, I've modified the data set that came from Timesheets. All right. When I click on this table, you'll notice that this query tab comes up. If I click on edit, edit will come up with a number of steps that I did to reproduce this. So if I started off with source, you'll notice it looks fairly similar to the one that we pulled in. I then go into, I group the rows. And you'll see here, I group that group of rows by assigned to, deliverable, and project phase. And because I'm asking for what the project cost was, I do a sum of hours right down to the project phase. So I have an aggregated value that comes in. I then add this cost column. Now the cost column, I took an earlier step here. I've already added the cost, so we don't have to do that. So all we have to do is actually sum the cost in ours, so it's slightly different, okay? And then I also change the data type for cost into a currency type, because before that it's just a number type. All right. So that can be handy in some reporting as well. All right. So we're going to go back and close that. We don't need that open. So let's try to remodel this data so that we've got it in our own sheet. And we will go to data. And this time we're going to go from table range. Okay, so we're pulling it from, oops, hold on a second. We want to go click on timesheet data, and we're doing this. We're going to data tab, and then from table range. So we're selecting the table, okay? And this one here is, we're going to call this project cost data. So this will create a new data source called project cost data. And if you recall, we did a group, and it was grouped by, I believe, let's see, it was grouped by assigned to title. Let's see if I can remember it here. Assigned to title, deliverable, and then project phase. Let's think here. I think that's it. We have hours. All right. And we're going to sum up the hours. So we look for hours here. We're at another column for cost, and we're going to sum up the cost column, which is right there as well. Okay, so now we have this nice data set that looks exactly the same as what we had in the other sheet. If we click on close and load, we now have this data sheet, which is a smaller subset of the data that we had in the other sheet. And we should make sure that we name this appropriately. So I think this was called project cost data. Project cost data. Okay. From here, we have a table that we're trying to model after this. So let's take a look at that table. Okay, project cost by person and deliverable chart. So let's see, is this it? By person, I think that's the one we want. Project cost by person, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the one we want. Okay, so let's just take a look here. I want to find out what data source this is coming from. Hours by person, I think that's about right. We just called it something slightly different. However, we are still getting the right information. Okay, so let's start this one from scratch here. So we do the same process with creating the pivot chart. We click on the table, click on pivot chart, and we're pulling in project cost data. We've done different names here, but that's totally fine. And we're going to click on, we're going to make sure that we're creating a new worksheet for this. Okay, and what did we call that worksheet here? We called that project costs by person. So let's go ahead and name that. And we can also name the chart while we're at it right now. So let's just change that. Let's find out what information we need to pull in. We're going to pull in the, let's see here, show the field list. We pull in the assigned to, deliverable, project phase, and then cost. Okay, so let's do that. The assigned to, okay, deliverable, project phase, and cost. Okay, so let's make sure we've got the right information. It looks like everything came in really nicely. Okay, and notice how we've also got this field here. It automatically recognized it as a currency, so it put a $sign in front of it. Actually, sorry, it didn't. We're going to change that right now. I was wondering, that would have been really nice, but let's do this right now. So we're going to click on the sum of cost and click on value field settings. And here, I'm going to change the number format. Change this to accounting. Now you don't have to be so granular as 2 decimal places. I don't think that we have very many times when we're using half dollars, so we can safely just click on no decimal places. Okay, so there we have it. All right. Now, Once again, you may be using this table for certain different types of purposes. I'll give this a title here. Um, and again, we're trying to work this, we're going to try to build this so that we've got it as a dashboard. And more important is how you might be working with this. If I'm trying to find out what a person is costing, okay, I might usually just select one person. Okay, that's something good to think about there. And as you're developing the need for more reporting, you can make that decision on your own, what information will show up. So I mentioned here we will automatically size a few things for that chart. And I think we're pretty good here. We've named our chart, so that's an important thing so that we can use it later with SharePoint. You can change the type of and style this chart displays. For now, I'm going to keep it just the way it is, okay? And we're going to save that so we don't lose our progress. So let's go back over to our dashboard and work on what's next. So I'm going to close up some of these features. Okay, so next one, we have resource usage by week. All right, so in this chart, what we may want to know is what tasks has a person actually done during the week. All right, this is very useful to know, if we're trying to understand, is someone overloaded or do they need more work? Then we can certainly look at this chart and realize that, oh, there's some space in this person's schedule to do that. Or they're working way too much and that's not good. Okay, so let's take a look at that one. So we call this resource usage by week and task. Okay, now when we're looking at this chart here, let's just show the fields. This one here uses our just straight data coming from our timesheet. Nothing too complicated about it. Let's get the name from this chart, and we're going to create a new chart from our data timesheet. Timesheet data, and we're going to, oops, I click on data and from table, and we're going to create a new, actually no, sorry, wrong one. We don't need to create a new query, we need to create a new chart. And we want to go to insert, pivot chart, and new worksheet. Okay, so we can paste that name in here, move it down the line. I'm going to name my chart right away so I don't forget. Okay. Oops, what happened here? Did I lose it? I think I'm okay. All right. So let's find out what fields we need for this one here. So we have assigned to, start of the week, task title, and a sum of hours. So from here, we're going to look for assigned to title. Okay. We're looking for, what was the other one we had? Start of week. Now, I'm going to change this one here because I prefer to use task date. And you could use either one. It doesn't make much of a difference. But I'm going to use task date as this one. It shouldn't make much of a change. But if you see that there is, then we'll fix it if we see something. All right. So again, it pulled in months for task date. Now the next one we have to do is, well, so we remove months and then we go to task.title. We bring in task title. And now we're going to do our grouping here on our date. So we just click on that, click group, remove months, set it to number of days 7. Click on OK. And now we've got a little better group. This one, once again, you can see that it's showing a lot of information. So if I am using this chart, I'm probably going to be saying, okay, how many tasks did Chris do over the last 2 weeks? Okay, but specifically, I have to change that filter, and I just say I want to just see what Chris did. And I can say, oh yeah, okay, well he's doing something every time, and then he has a lot of hours banked on this one. So there's a way of knowing what somebody is doing. Now, in the context of our classes, each week we have a status report, so we simply want to know what tasks you did, and typically a task or a a chart like this is better viewed as a bar chart from the side. At least I like it that way. You may find differently, but you can certainly make your own choice on that one. Let's just make a couple cosmetic changes here. We'll change our legend down to the bottom. Okay, and it kind of gets a little squishy, so just be aware of how you're formatting this. We'll change the size, make sure it's ready for SharePoint later on. Okay, pretty good. I think that's all right. Good. And you can change that data series as well. It says total, but you could have it say something like hours. If you want to change that, let's see if what happens if I do that. Oh, okay. So it says pivot table name already exists. Well, maybe we won't do that in this one, but you kind of get the idea that you can make some changes if you need to. I would say I'm going to say total hours. Total hours. That makes a little more sense. Okay. Good. We'll save that. So we've got that one now. Next one is our dashboard. Oops, sorry, we're not going to this dashboard. It's not finished yet. We're going to our one that we're modeling from. Okay, so we just did this one here, this resource usage. Now we're going to go look into the task versus actual. Now these ones get a little bit more complicated, and they're the ones that actually are very useful in gauging how successful a task is being managed. So let's try to understand what this one does here. This one uses the task list data again, so nothing too complicated. We have the hours, we have deliverable, project phase, task title, budgeted hours, and I think that's what we have there. Okay. Now, one thing that you may be tempted to do is say, well, I want to know what the budget for the phase is. Are we on budget for the phase? And because the numbers that are used in the budget numbers are per task, they don't bubble up very well to the phase. You can, if you experiment with it, you'll see that it's not really going to work that way. We added in a weekly budget number, which will be used for the next chart that we do, and I'll explain to you how that works next. So this chart, okay, is called task budget versus actual chart. I'm going to go back over to our main sheet, click on timesheet data and insert pivot chart, and we're going to create a new table or a new worksheet. We've copied our information here, so we're going to call this the task budget versus actual chart. So just remember that. And sort of the first step that we do when we give it a resize here while we're at it. There we go, 5.75. That way we don't have to remember it later. And we change our sheet And there we have it. So all the naming things are done first. All right. You'll find that this gets a little faster as we go. I'm doing a lot of talking, so this takes a lot longer than it normally would. But you think you'll find that it goes by quite quickly. So let's look first of all at our deliverable title. I think that was our first function here. We had deliverable, project phase, and then task title. Project phase, task title. Okay. And then we have sum of hours and then average of budgeted hours. I'll explain to you what the average of budgeted hours means in a moment. Okay. Sum of hours. Okay. And then the budgeted hours is not going to be a sum because that would take all of the information attached to each task, and there could be a lot of it, but it's all exactly the same number if you recall, because if it's grouped on task, all of that information will have the same value. So if I select average, it's always going to be the same number. But if I select sum, let's say I have two tasks with 20 hours and two entries for that same task, it would count as 40 if I sum it, but if I average it, it's going to show 20. Okay, so let's take a look at this one now. We will drill down into legend here, and we're going to select bottom. Okay, move our legend down to the bottom. Okay, and let's find out what else we need. We're missing a title, so let's put a chart title, and it'll be above the chart. I'm going to paste that title in there that we had before. Now this is a little bit squishy here, and we'll see what we can do to make that change here. So let's find out what our dashboard looks like. So we changed this from a column chart to a bar chart. All right. And that's okay. We can certainly look at it like this. But one thing that you will see is you're going to find that that over time that this chart starts to break down as there's a lot more tasks involved. Okay. So you'll have to be a little more creative in how you use that chart. Okay. So as you can see, we're still a little squished up here as far as how the information is displayed, but the key is that the information is still being displayed here. You can in fact take away phases if you wanted to make it a little easier to read, but the important thing is that we've got a view on how successful a task is. And from what we're looking at, let me just change this here. I like using the blue. No. Some hours, yeah, okay. Okay, so what this one says here is that we have budgeted 10 hours for design task 1, and we have used 5 hours, okay? For this one here, we have 20 hours budgeted, and we have used 21 hours of that time. So that one would be considered over budget. This one here is 20 hours and 10 hours used, but this one is way out of whack here, and we have 5 hours budgeted and 23 hours used. Okay, so again, valuable chart information for taking a look at what's being used and how are people using the hours against the tasks that they're establishing. Okay, we'll save that. All right, we'll go back over to our dashboard. We're almost done here. All right, now this one here we'll be using the weekly budgeted versus actual. So over time, you want to be tracking how we're doing by week. So each week we should have a certain amount of budgeted hours on average that we can use. And if you recall, we established that we were going to have 4 people on this team, and it would be a maximum of 20 hours per week. Okay, so going with that, we are going to modify what we take in here. So let's see. We have let's see. Yes, we have all of the task information that we normally have, and we're going to take in that. Let's go to our timesheet data table again. We're going to click on the table, and then click on Insert, and then we go to Pivot Chart. New worksheet again. Let's get the name of this one more time. Okay. And just like I always do, name these things first. Name the sheet. Okay, good. I think we're pretty good here. Now let's find out what data this is pulling in here. So we have deliverable and task date. And so let's pull that in, deliverable and task date. And task date is still knows that Excel still knows that it's grouped um, by week. It's got slightly interesting numbers there, and I want to just make sure that the numbers are coming in correctly. This one was originally on the 30th, and the other one, so I want to make sure that it's always coming in at the same time. So there we have it. That's made the change for us. So it has 4 weeks in API, and that's exactly what I was hoping for. Okay, now let's pull in. We have our weekly budgeted hours, and this is an average, as I mentioned. Notice here, if I keep it as a sum, we've got these really big numbers here, and that's not what we want. We want the average because it's actually the same number across the board. You'll notice that. Okay, and then we want our hours, and that is still a sum of hours because there's a number that's different on each record, and we're doing the sum of hours. Okay. Now notice how we're doing this one. This is different types that we're going to mix up here. So we're going to change the weekly to show that it's going to be a line chart. Okay, and I think that I just have it like that. Yeah, let's put some points on it just to make it look a little different. Okay, and we'll maybe size this just a little bigger for us to see. Okay, so let's go back over to our other dashboard here, and we can see that we've got roughly the same type of chart. The only difference here is I fixed that date. That is an error over here. I might as well make that change. Why not? Um, let's see. We won't waste any time on that one right now, but I'll make that change for myself. But you can see that we've got this nice budget line of 20, and here each week we can see how many hours are being put in, and we can see that this one there wasn't very many hours put in, so I would be asking my team, hey guys, what happened here? We had so many hours that we could have used, but we didn't use them. And then this team, this time it looked like the team went a little crazy and had to get as much done as they possible. They had a few sleepless nights this one. Okay. Now these are the ones that a team obviously wants to avoid. This is, as a project manager, you want to be thinking about managing their time wisely. Okay. So let's go back over to our chart here, and I'll manage how this looks. Change the legend to the bottom. Maybe give us a title above the chart. I still have my title in there, so I'll use that. And I think we're pretty good. And now, once again, you may be looking at, so notice here it has API and deliverable too. You could decide that the deliverable isn't the important thing here, and just knowing overall how's your team performing, you could easily do it like this, and then you're finding out all of the hours spent through the entire project. It doesn't matter what deliverable they're working on. But in this case, I'm asking to know how many hours people are spending per deliverable. Okay, so we will save that, and of course we want to do that resize again. So let's check that. And you can do all this another time as well. It's not going to hurt. You don't have to do the resizing every time, but I like to get that out of the way. Okay, we'll save that. Couple more last ones here. I think we are on the very last one, is overall budget versus actual. Okay, so let's find out how we do this one. So notice over here, we've got a very small group of information here. And it means that I've created a data set that is used specifically for this chart. So let's go over and examine what that data set looks like. It's called overall budget versus actual data. So this is a grouped chart, okay? And we'll open up the query. So you click on the chart and then click edit. So let's find out what I did here. So I started off with the timesheets data. I grouped the rows. Let's find out what I grouped it by. I said I just want the deliverable, and then I take a sum of the budgeted hours, okay, overall. So this would be taking all those weekly budget hours and say that by the end of the project, if we were working 20 hours a week, this is how much we should have spent, okay? And that's an average number. So if you're using your overall budget wisely, you should be able to keep within that number fairly consistently, all right? Um, the budgeted hours that you use per task will factor into that calculation at some point, but it's more the visualizations that will help you keep in range. So we're going to be looking at the overall budget and the hours that have been spent on each deliverable here. Okay, so we'll just cancel this because we already know this. We add a budget cost column. And if you recall, what we do here is we multiply the budget by 50, okay, the budget column that we brought in as an aggregated value, multiply that by 50, and that will give us how much the total project should cost, all right, just based on a weekly average. And then the actual cost is how many hours were spent, that aggregated information, times 50. Okay, and 50 again is just our hourly rate that we're charging. And then at the very end, we change these data types to currency. So let's get started doing this here. So I'm going to close this up, and we're going to go into our sheet here again. So let's see, we'll move our timesheet data up to the front a bit. And what we're going to do now is we are going to create another query, okay, based on this table. So we can click anywhere in our table and click from table or range. It'll automatically pull that in. Okay, let's find out what we actually called this one here. Oops, I got to close that up. Sorry, guys. We can backtrack one step. Copy my data name here. Okay, we'll go back over to our video. Click from table range. Okay, call it that. We're going to call it overall budget versus actual data. Okay. Now, from that, we can now do our grouping. And we grouped it by deliverable title. We called in the budget hours, and we did a sum of the weekly budget hours. Okay, we'll go click on advanced here so we can add a few more tables or more columns. We call it hours. I'm going to sum up hours, and hours is right here. Okay, and so far so good. We should have the first part of that table. So we now have our budget hours and our hours. You may even want to call this actual hours or out, but I'm just going to keep it simple and call it hours. We're going to do a cost for how many hours that this project should require. So let's say that we're going to call this budget cost. Oops, spelling mistake. So we go budget hours times 50. Okay, and we click on OK. All right, now that adds in our cost, budget cost that is. Okay, and then we look for actual cost. So this is the number of hours times 50 again. Okay, and now we have two new features here. And remember, we're actually looking at these are currency values. Now there is one more table or one more column that I added in, and I think it was cost variance. So I'm going to close this and load it to a new sheet, and just name that sheet. I'm just going to remember what that was called. We call it the cost variance. So let's look at what that was. Give me a second here, guys. Let's refresh that. There we go. Click on edit, and we'll find out what that column actually was. We have cost variance, and cost variance is budgeted cost minus the actual cost. So usually, if a task is on budget or below budget, then we're going to be in a positive number. If it's above budget, or it will be a negative number. Okay, so good to know. Let's add that custom column in there into our new table here. Okay, we'll click on query, edit, and notice there, guys, like sometimes that query button, query tab doesn't appear. I just clicked on refresh data and it just came back up again. Who knows why it does that? So we're going to click on add column, and we're going to call this cost variance. Okay, and we are going to be calculating cost budget, or budget cost, minus the actual cost, and we click on OK. All right, so now we've got all the same numbers. The last thing that we did was we changed everything to currency. Okay, and it doesn't really make much difference that we were doing this. Just more of a visual cue to tell you what data type it is. Okay, so let's click home, close, and load. And now we have that information available to us. Okay. Lastly, we're very, very close to being finished on this one. Let's find out what we have here. So we have our chart, and this one is the budget, the overall budget versus actual chart. And it's quite easy to look at, or easy to create. From this data set, we go to insert and pivot chart. I click OK. And again, we're going to name that sheet. I just copied the information from the other sheet, so you can do the same. Paste that. Okay, and change. And again, we're naming the title of the chart so that it's got the appropriate name, and that you can come back to and refer to it when we build our dashboard. And I'll do that in another video. Well, so now let's look at the information that this chart has here. We have the deliverable title and the sum of actual cost and sum of budgeted cost. Okay, so we have the deliverable title and the sum of budgeted cost and sum of actual cost. Okay. Now there's only one entry in here, so that's why sum is okay to use. So right now, this is showing us. I'm gonna flip these. I like them being more like that for some reason. I like the budget to be orange. But the actual cost here is blue, and it shows that we're at $3,250, and our budget total is $10,000 to do this API. Now you may be also interested in changing the data type here so that we've got, again, we're using accounting, no decimal spaces. Click OK, click OK. I'll do the same thing for budget. Counting, no decimal spaces. Click OK. Great. Okay, so that is that. Now, getting all this stuff into the, we should actually add the chart title as well. So we'll do that. Okay. Change where the legend sits at the bottom. Okay, I think that's pretty good there. All right, so super. So in building our dashboard, I just did something like this. I did 2020 project dashboard, and I made the font really big, just big enough to pop a bit. So I had my budget versus actual chart. I just select that and I cut it. So I do Control X, or you can cut it by yourself. Okay, I paste it in here. Okay, what else do we have? Our project cost by person and deliverable. So project cost by person. Okay, I think that's it. I'm going to cut that. Okay, we'll go here and I'm going to paste it right there. Then we have hours by deliverable by week. Hours by deliverable by week right here. I'm going to take that, cut that chart, go to dashboard, and I'm just going to move it over. Okay, and I'm pasting it at a cell so that they're nice and neatly organized. Okay. The next one, I'm going to paste it right down below here, and that one is the weekly budgeted by versus actual. Okay, I'm going to take that and cut that now. Okay, we paste that. And I notice this one is just slightly out of size here. Let's just double check our size. Nope, we're good. Okay, great. And we'll check what else we have. The task budget versus actual chart. Okay, take that, cut, go back over to our dashboard. I know this seems really tiresome here. So let's try to get this stuff going. And then what else do we have here? Our resource usage by week is our last one to pull in. And resource usage by week. And we paste that in. Let's close up some of these things because we don't necessarily need all of that information on the same page. Okay, so we have completed this. Now that was a fairly long process, and I'm sure that if you get used to it, you'll find it much quicker to do. But the key is you've done this, and once it's done, you don't have to do it again, because anytime you're trying to manage your projects from this point, you have everything all in one space. Okay, and this is really helpful, because from this point on, you don't have to do this anymore. All you're doing is updating charts and being able to, if you want to put it into a PowerPoint, you can make a copy of that chart, paste it into your PowerPoint, or even just keep a live link from the Excel sheet into your PowerPoint, and you'll find that you never really have to do a whole lot of updating. It just automatically updates for you. So thanks a lot, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I love the comments. So please, if you have any comments for me, do let me know. Remember to subscribe, like, and share. And make sure you get the notifications on any new videos that I'm producing. I'm going to continue on with the SharePoint series, and I'll show you how to make a dashboard page using this Excel cell chart information. It's a pretty cool process, and again, if you want people to be able to see what's happening in one shot on your project, they can just go to that one page, and everything is right there in front of them. So thanks a lot, guys. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video.